Hi, I'm Laura Messino of Architecture Tours LA, and you're listening to U.S. Modernist Radio.
Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Mama don't allow no architecture around here. Oh, I don't care what Mama don't allow, gonna draw mine modern anyhow. Mama don't allow no architecture around here.
Welcome to U.S. Modernist Radio, where we talk and laugh with people who enjoy, own, create, dream about, preserve, love, and hate modernist architecture, the most exciting and controversial buildings in the world. I'm George Smart. Nowhere in the world celebrates modernism better than Palm Springs, California. Every February, they have a huge architecture and design festival called Modernism Week, which actually lasts 11 days. Modernism Week is a dazzling spectacle of lectures, architecture, martinis, movies, more martinis, and even restaurants where breakfast martinis are readily available with your eggs and bacon. It's pretty incredible. If you're into mid-century modern, this is the Super Bowl of all the architecture we love, an event not to be missed. And we were there talking with nearly all the keynote speakers, authors, and special guests.
And I'm Tom Guild. I was there, too, with George. And my first time in Palm Springs at Modernism Week, it was like going to the biggest club meeting of people who speak the same language. I never thought there would be somebody other than George and his guest who could talk about Googie style and brutalism. And it's a whole town full of people.
Oh, yes.
It's like a secret handshake.
It is. Support for U.S. Modernist Radio comes from Realtor Angela Roll, your special real estate agent for bringing modernist design expertise to buyers and sellers. Reach Angela at angelaroll.com. That's ROEHL, or 919-995-0550.
You want to go with U.S. Modernist to Modernism Week in 2020? Send Mr. Modernism, George, an email at george@usmodernist.org to get more information. Today, from poolside at the swanky Hotel Skylark, George welcomes one of our favorite guests, Ms. Modernism herself, Annalisa Capurro from Sydney, Australia, who has logged more Modernism Week miles than anyone else in the world, followed by the founder of the Palm Springs Modern Committee, Peter Moruzzi, and then finally, Modernism Week CEO Chris Mobley will stop by.
Annalisa, how far is it from Sydney to Palm Springs in miles? Do you know?
I have absolutely no idea because we work in kilometres in Australia.
Oh, right.
I'm a metric baby.
Metric baby.
Are we talking hours on an aeroplane?
Well, let's start with that.
Yeah, so we're looking at 13 hours from Sydney to LAX with a tailwind.
Yeah.
And then coming back from LAX to Sydney, we're looking at 15 and a half hours. So
about 14 on average each way.
On average, yeah.
And you figure the plane is traveling approximately 500 miles an hour.
You'd hope.
Which would be 7,000 miles in each direction. Plus, it's 120 miles from L.A. to Palm Springs.
Well, that's right. We've still got the drive. And with traffic, that can be, maybe
longer.
2 hours, maybe
so
5 hours if
got
you're stuck in traffic.
Tom, we have a number?
Okay, Qantas Flight 11.
Yep, that's it. QF11. That's my favourite.
That is? Okay.
It's the A380.
It's 7,534 miles.
Oh, okay.
To L.A.
Yeah.
And then from there to here is,
All right, so follow along with us, folks. We're doing the math. So it's about 15,000 miles plus 240 for the local connector to Palm Springs. How many times have you made that run, Annalisa?
Oh, George, now you're pushing me. I've been coming to Palm Springs now for Modernism Week for close on a decade.
Yeah.
So a lot of times, Yeah.
150,000 miles, maybe?
Yeah.
Somewhere in there?
I would be saying that. Those frequent flyer points are really getting up there.
Oh, yeah.
Exactly.
Do you have status on Qantas now? Do you get to upgrade yourself?
I do occasionally, yes. I'm that lucky.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
That is great.
So do they name a koala after you?
Not quite. But I know the staff very well. It's
that's cool.
Hi, here she is again.
Well, what attracted you to come to Palm Springs in the first place?
Look, I was incredibly fortunate, George. I actually won a scholarship, a professional development travelling scholarship, to come and look at the preservation and the promotion of mid-century modernist architecture. Because I've been working in this field, trying to preserve these buildings for, maybe 2 decades or more now. Mm-hmm. And, back then it wasn't like it is now, obviously. So I won this scholarship to come and really look at what people were doing in Palm Springs, in Los Angeles, and in Chicago. So that was my thesis, really, to find out how we could sort of use those, skills back in Australia to promote mid-century housing that was, getting demolished.
So what happened after you got here? I mean, were you kind of blown away by it all?
Yeah. I just fell absolutely, madly, passionately in love, like it seems a lot of people do. And I was fortunate that year to actually be invited to speak as well. So another gentleman and I, a guy called Chris Osborne, who's from Brisbane, Australia, he runs Australian Modern. So he has a group, which again is sort of looking at preservation. So the two of us spoke, and we were the first international speakers that Modernism Week actually ever had.
Really?
Yeah. So, we started off on a good foot, and look, it's such an extraordinary community here. When this is your sort of life's work and your passion like me, to be surrounded, as you know, by an entire community that is dedicated to the same causes is just, I've never experienced that anywhere else in the world. So coming here was like Disneyland, like Christmas. That's what it was, and once I got here, I just had to keep coming back. So now I feel like I'm part of this community. They're so generous. They've opened their arms to me, and yeah, it's my second home.
Well, Annalisa is definitely part of the community. She is known as Ms. Modernism around these parts. And you'll see her at tours and lectures and events and parties. Can't miss you, which is great. I mean, that's how I first met you 6 years ago, maybe.
That's right. I've been to a number of your lectures, actually. Yeah. And tours and parties and everything. We run into each other nowadays.
Doesn't this sound terrible, folks? Just a terrible way of spending your time out here in Palm Springs.
And now you're Mr. Modernism.
Yeah, I think I am.
Exactly.
You stay here long enough, you get a nickname.
That's right.
Well, what were some of the lessons from those early trips here in Palm Springs that you took back to preserve houses in Australia?
Look, I've got to say the biggest lesson that I've learnt is before I came, I was very much focused on getting buildings listed by government bodies so that people understood how important they were. But once I got here, I realised that's not the best way to do it because, the thing is, once people, let's say, buy a house, even if it's a significant house, most people aren't very keen, to get it heritage listed.
Right.
It's not something that people want to do because they think they're going to be held back from maybe, renovating it or doing things. So the biggest lesson for me and what I've sort of, I suppose now describe as my catch cry and how, my work has evolved since that very first time here is it's about appreciation. So I have this tagline, preservation by appreciation.
Nice.
If you get people to love it, then they're going to look after it. That's how you do it. So by having parties at, the Frank Sinatra house and bringing people go, wow, maybe I could sort of have a bit of this life back home in my mid-century house. So that's the thing. You make people love it. You show them how beautiful it is. You show them how fun it is. You show them how they can have a fabulous life in these houses. And that's what I found. And that's the biggest lesson because there's nowhere else in the world that does that like Modernism Week.
Yeah.
Because people come here that aren't even interested in modernism. That's what gets me. And then once they leave, they suddenly think...
Or they don't realize they're interested in
modernism. Well, that's right, yeah.
They get tricked into it.
They get tricked into it, yeah. They might come because, they like vintage cars, or they might come because they wear vintage clothes. But then they get here and they learn so much, they see so much, and they get caught up in the passion and the enthusiasm and the fun for this architecture that, we're all now really happy to say that after a couple of decades, we've managed to save quite a lot of it.
Absolutely. And there's so many entry points into this. I mean, you can just fall in love with a doorknob from 1954 and be chasing it around and trying to find examples of it because you want to find it on eBay at some point and put it on your Victorian house.
Exactly. That's it. Or, some amazing Formica with, boomerangs from the 1950s.
Oh, the boomerangs
don't you just love
awesome.
that? Especially being Australian. That's my all-time favourite.
So you live in a very significant house.
I do, yes. Well, like I said, this is my grand passion and pretty much consumes my, home life, my work life, my travel life. So I was very fortunate to 9 years ago have the opportunity to buy one of the most significant mid-century houses in Australia. It's known as the Jack House. It won the Sulman Award in 1957, and the Sulman Award is the highest accolade that the Institute of Architects of New South Wales gives buildings. So it won this award. It really catapulted the architect and his firm that he'd just started the year before into some sort of notoriety. And suddenly they were on the agenda. People were seeing this house. It became famous. It was published. And it's, the thing that attracted me to it and why I bought it is it's totally intact. And being an interior designer, that's the thing. I'm an historian and I'm a preservationist, but by trade I'm an interior designer. So my grand passion lies with interiors. And so this house is extraordinary because it's literally got an original 1957 kitchen, bathroom. There's original wallpapers that in my research since buying the house I've found are in the Victoria and Albert Museum in their 1950s pattern archive.
Wow.
There's Marimekko fabric that's built into this incredible speaker system on the wall. So for me, a couple of things drew me to it. One, it was the architect's original house and his own house that he and his wife, who was an architect as well, and they built it together for their own family, so it was their house. And secondly, the fact that it was intact. So those two things were my guiding force. I wanted an architect's own house and I wanted a house that was intact. So really for the last 9 years, I've opened the house to the Historic Houses Trust, to the Institute of Architects, to the Australian Architects Association, to universities, to overseas architects visiting. I've had film shoots there. I've had Kate Blanchett photographed for Vogue magazine there. My passion was I said to Russell Jack when I bought the house, I said, I can't keep this to myself. It's just too good. So I've literally spent the last 9 years giving as many people as access to this house as possible. And Russell, I must say, is still alive and well at 94. He just celebrated his birthday in January. And, he's become so much part of my life, my daughter's life. He's like a surrogate grandfather. And, and I always say that I would give up the house for the relationship that I've acquired with him since. So it's been, the most rewarding and enriching, experience of my life.
So as Ms. Modernism, as the person who has probably traveled the furthest distance over the longest period of time.
Yes, I usually win the award, Gary Johns, when he does his lost saved and endangered lecture. And he says, who's travelled the furthest? I usually win the prize, yes.
You'll need 2 prizes now.
That's right. Well, now I don't put my hand up because I want other people to win.
So what advice would you have for people that are considering coming here for the first time?
I would say do your research, because now, this year, there was evidently 350 events on and something like 40 neighbourhood tours of houses. It is extraordinary. When I first came, there was maybe 25,000 people, and, last year they had over 100,000. And when I first came, I managed in the 12 days I was here to literally go to every event. So I would say do your research. That's the most important thing, because there is so much to see and it's quite overwhelming, for somebody who's coming for the first time. So I'd say look at what you really want to do and find the things that interest you the most and get in early, because as you know too, George, tickets just sell out, sometimes within an hour on the website when they're released.
Sure, you have to be ready for it.
So if you're ready, yeah. I mean, nowadays, luckily, they release the tickets on the website. Well, they release the program a week before, so you've got a week to plan. So I say get online a week before the 1st of November, because that's the date they always come out. Do your research, but prior to that, read books on Palm Springs. There's so many books now on all the iconic houses here. There's books on, the architects. There's books on the movie stars. There's books on whatever you're interested in. So do your research, get online, and then plan your tickets, and then, just keep your fingers crossed and hope you get the tickets you want.
Right. And remember, if you have a spouse or partner who's really not into this, there's lots for them to do in Palm Springs. This is an incredible variety of activities besides architecture.
Well, Palm Springs, the spa, my gosh, that is just fabulous.
All the spas.
Golfing,
there's casinos.
Snow, what about this year?
Snow, yes.
The amazing amount of snow this year, more than I've seen in, the decade I've been coming. So, skiing.
There's art. There's a huge food scene here.
Fabulous. The food scene, that's the other thing I'm going to say. In the time I've been coming, watching that change, because, I come from Australia and Sydney's a very big food culture. I was, originally from Melbourne, which is even a bigger food culture, you might argue. So, when I got here originally, I was slightly disappointed, I'll be honest, that, I expected Palm Springs to have fabulous restaurants. But
have you been to Denny's?
Oh, you know what? I have been to Denny's. It was one of the first restaurants I went to when there wasn't a lot of other choices.
Right. It's
but
open
nowadays,
24 hours a day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But nowadays, look, there is something to, there's something to cover everybody. There's, farm to table food. There's vegan. There's
great ethnic food.
Great ethnic food, Greek, Lebanese, which coming from Australia is just, fabulous. So, the food scene here is amazing.
Well, Annalisa, I really thank you for coming by and chatting with us today. We look forward to seeing you next year when we all come back, and we'll have to plan some events together.
Exactly. Well, look, it's been my absolute pleasure again, George. And I've got to say that you are fabulous, a supporter of modernism and saving buildings, and the fact that you bring so many people here every year and expose more and more people is just fabulous. And you guys travel a long way too. Maybe not quite as long as me, but
only
you still,
2,800 miles.
But still, you still come here too. So I'm just, such a supporter of your work and what you do. And thank you again for having me. It's always a pleasure
you're welcome.
to see you.
We'll have you back next year.
I love that. See you then.
All right.
Stay with us. George will be right back after a brief martini on the rocks. There's more to come from Palm Springs Modernism Week.
So, Peter, I understand that you really like the coffee here.
Of course I do. It's hotel coffee.
You were making noises with it earlier.
Well, indeed.
Would you like to repeat? Yes.
Here we go.
That's excellent. The
What
sound.
would your mother say?
She would not be happy.
Yeah. Okay.
She's very prim.
There's a lot of good things this week. I mean, not just the coffee, but the tours and the movies and the films and the lectures.
Indeed.
And this is the culmination of, I guess, the 14th year
Something
of
like that.
Modernism Week. It's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
But your association with how all this got started goes back before that, and even to L.A.
Correct.
Before that.
Yes.
So what was your first kind of experience organizing a modern event or group?
Well, that would be back in L.A. I moved to Los Angeles in 1990 from San Francisco, but I had already been coming down to L.A. for 2 years previous to just attend L.A. Conservancy Modern Committee home tours, one of which was a Lautner tour.
Nice.
That just opened my eyes, especially to Silver Lake, which is where I ultimately ended up living once I moved down here, because there's so much great Lautner, and of
Was
course
that
Neutra.
Silvertop up there? Did you go through
Silvertop,
that?
yeah, absolutely. That was on the tour, and I thought, oh my God, this is the greatest concentration of modern architecture I've ever seen, especially coming from the Bay Area, where you know, in San Francisco, where you don't have that much. So I got very excited, moved to LA, not for that reason entirely. I actually went to film school, but I joined the LA Conservancy Modern, actually at the time it was called the Modern and Post WW2 Committee.
Okay.
And then I became chair, and I changed it to just Modern Committee to make it easier.
It's less
and
of a mouthful.
Yes, ModCom for short.
Okay.
And we had a lot of preservation battles then, but we also did a lot of education, many different and unusual tours. Industrial tour of LA, which was spectacular.
Now, what year was this?
I became chair in 91, and I was chair all the way through 97, and I was also on the board of the LA Conservancy, which is actually the country's largest preservation organization.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
But
Thousands of members.
That was fairly early on in the modernist resurgence.
Yes.
So what kind of
Absolutely.
battles were you fighting in the early days?
Oh, my God. Well, in terms of actual battles, one of the earliest was for the Bob's Big Boy in Toluca Lake, designed by Wayne McAllister, who who was the architect of the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas, the Fremont Hotel, and dozens and dozens of streamlined, modern restaurants built in the 1930s in Los Angeles, all over the place. And Chris Nichols wrote a terrific book called The Leisure Architecture of Wayne McAllister that documents all of these long-gone restaurants. So this was one of the last remaining buildings that McAllister had designed, 1949.
Was it a drive-in, Big Boy?
It was both. It was a drive-in and a sit-down restaurant.
Okay.
And it
last remaining?
It was the early, well, I had dinner last night with Alan Hess,
okay,
who was probably
one of our guests,
right, one of the greatest experts on this sort of thing. And he said he thinks there's only 2 McAllister buildings left.
Wow.
The Fremont Hotel and Bob's in Toluca Lake, out of the hundreds of buildings that he once designed. So it was important that this be preserved. Well, the owner of the Bob's wanted it demolished for an office building, because in a very valuable location not too far from Warner Brothers in Burbank, Toluca Lake, Burbank. And it was an ugly battle, and we didn't really have support because people thought, I remember when that coffee shop was built. How can that be significant? Things like that.
Sure.
And
we still hear that sometimes.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Nothing could be significant. It was built in my lifetime kind of thing. And, we ultimately prevailed. And interestingly, the owner of the building, after it was designated, decided that he would invest in restoring the building and making it the most popular hangout for car collectors. They do a weekly car meet there.
Oh, that's a great tie-in.
They still serve, now they do the outdoor drive-in service that they used to do a long time ago. It is phenomenally successful. So successful, in fact, that he actually came to a preservation conference in the late 90s and testified on behalf of how preservation ultimately had helped his business, and how he had changed his mind and he wanted to let other commercial property owners know that you shouldn't be afraid of preservation because you can really make it work.
Wow,
so
you
that
really had a convert
that
there.
was something else, I'll tell you.
Is this one of those big boys with the giant statue out in front?
Yes. And there's so few left. I mean, essentially the chain is gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think they have a new truck commercial now that's been on a lot, and you see a giant big boy in the back of somebody's pickup going down the interstate.
Did they steal it from somewhere?
I don't know. I mean, maybe they bought it on eBay.
Yeah, right.
Probably.
So that was one of your successes, and this was early in the 90s, before the resurgence of all this
the
interest.
90s was not a resurgence at all.
Okay.
Especially here in Palm Springs. No, it was battle after battle. I mean, it was the McDonald's in Downey that Alan Hess had nominated, and it was designated for the National Register. That was threatened after the 94 earthquake, and that was a huge production to try to save that, which ultimately was saved. And the company restored it, and now it's, hugely popular. There were residential battles, but also we lost some major ones. We lost the Ship's chain, Ship's coffee shops. There were 2 of them, and they were incredibly space age and beautiful. And both of those were...
Those were Googie style?
Googie, absolutely. There was Googie style, and those are gone.
And Tom, tell us what Googie is.
I learned that it's basically Jetsons.
Essentially Jetsons.
Yeah.
Lots of glass.
Space age.
Angles.
Right.
Space age 1960 style.
Neon.
Yeah.
Right.
Looking
Interesting
ahead
roofs.
of its time.
Yeah.
Cool landscaping, indoor, outdoor,
That's
all that.
one of the terms I've learned working with you.
Yeah.
Never heard it before.
And it was named after a coffee shop in Los Angeles.
In Los Angeles.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there you go. So anyway, we did have losses, we had successes, but things changed ultimately in the 2000s.
Mm-hmm. And so, how did your organization PS Modcom get started?
Yeah, when did you come here?
I started coming here in the mid-90s. Well, actually, I started coming here in 1991. I didn't even want to come to Palm Springs because I thought, having come from the Bay Area, that, it's all old retirees and Gerald Ford and Bob Hope. And I was like,
anti-Berkeley.
I'm not. Exactly. That's where I graduated from.
Okay.
And so I said, I'm not interested in Palm Springs. Why would I want to come out there? Anyway, the person I was with at the time, and still am, said, no, you'll probably like it because, it's pretty and the weather's great, and didn't know anything about architecture. And came out and said, oh my God, this place is incredible. I can see why people have been coming here for decades. And the mountains, the palms, the sun, the pools. I mean, and I started noticing architecture. But I didn't get that involved in that aspect of architecture until around 1995. So mostly it was just coming out here to enjoy everything.
On vacation.
On vacation, yeah. But 95, everything changed.
What changed?
At the LA Conservancy's Modern Committee, we had a guest who visited, Brad Dunning, who was on the...
I know Brad. He's been on the show.
Yeah, he's great. He was really early here in Palm Springs. He was on the Historic Site Preservation Board here in the mid-90s. And he nominated 7 Albert Frey-designed buildings for local designation, one of which was the Tramway gas station, which is now the Visitor Center. It has that hyperbolic paraboloid roof. Yes, exactly. The foot of the tramway. So it was going to be demolished for a Spanish-style sales office. And there was going to be a huge development of Spanish-style tract houses up the slope.
Yeah.
A virgin slope that's never been developed. And so he asked us, Brad came to Los Angeles and asked our group if we could come out and testify at City Council in support of this building, because there were so few people here in Palm Springs who had any interest in it. And even the ex-mayor, Frank Bogert, wrote an editorial saying that this building wasn't of any value. He remembers when it was built. And, it's just a gas station, and why would anyone care? And all these... carpetbaggers are coming from L.A. trying to tell you it's important when it's not. So it was kind of odd and creepy. But we still testified. It was designated, and then 2 weeks later, the designation was rescinded because of political pressure here in the city.
Really? How do you rescind a designation?
There's a 2-step process here.
There's probably a form you have to fill out.
Yeah. They did themselves, actually, the council. They have what they call the first reading and the second reading. So the first reading, they voted yes. And then the second reading, they said, well, actually, we made a mistake. And then they...
Never mind.
Yeah, it was a never mind.
Yeah.
But it didn't get demolished, interestingly. It stayed. The developer never got his financing. So it stayed empty, boarded up. And then... 2 gentlemen who were art collectors purchased it and turned it into a sculpture gallery and garden. And that's ultimately what saved it, because they spent a lot of money restoring it. Then the city bought it and turned it into the visitor center now. So that was what brought me to Palm Springs in terms of preservation. But I still wasn't living here.
Yeah.
And didn't own a house here. That was until 1998.
And what about the organization, though?
It didn't exist. The Modern Committee didn't exist until 1999. I had been on the board of the Palm Springs Preservation Foundation starting in 98. And at the time, they didn't want to engage in advocacy, strong advocacy. So when the Albert Frey designed Fire Station Number 1 was targeted for demolition for a parking structure by the city itself, because the city owned the fire station, I said, well, I was on the board of PSPF. I said, we have to fight this. We can't just let it come down. They didn't feel comfortable at the time, so I said, well, I guess I'll start a modern committee in Palm Springs.
So you're sort of like the special forces, and they're the Army. You're going to go out and do these special operations.
Yeah, well, they've become much more advocacy-oriented since then, by the way. They're a great organization. But at the time, they weren't. So in 99, I started the Palm Springs Modern Committee with a small group of people. We met at Modern Way, Courtney Newman's mid-century furnishing shop.
Okay.
And it started growing. So anyway, in that battle, we won. The city was convinced that they had something of value, and they did not demolish the fire station. So that was a big success.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I drove by.
It's incredible. It's on the National Register of Historic Places, by the way. I wrote the nomination for that.
Okay.
So that was the beginning of the Modern Committee 20 years ago.
20 years ago. And help people understand the difference between these 3 major groups. You've got a PS Modcom, you've got PSPF, and you've got the Museum of Art A&D. Museum, are they the 3 major ones?
Yes. I mean, the Historical Society to some extent would be a 4th.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's kind of the difference between those as the clans of preservation in Palm Springs?
Well, Palm Springs Preservation Foundation was founded to educate about all styles of architecture here. Everything from craftsman, Spanish style, you name it, all the way to modern.
Okay.
We were founded strictly to focus on modern design, the Palm Springs Modern Committee.
Okay.
Modern Architecture and Design. The Architecture and Design Center, which is part of the Art Museum, the Palm Springs Art Museum, was founded probably, I think, around 2006 or so. So later. And, of course, they have behind them the power of the Art Museum and the benefactors and so forth. They have now an actual museum which is
building.
a beautiful building that was a bank, East Earl Williams 1960 bank.
With a cool gift shop located in the vault.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yep.
And if you don't pay, they lock you in there. You try to sneak
Overnight.
out. That's right.
That's one of those escape room things.
Yeah.
But they do have one of those little air vents so you don't actually run out of oxygen.
That's thoughtful of
That's
them.
helpful.
Yeah. They also have the drive-through window.
That
which you
they
got a
still left
big
that,
kick
which
out
is
of.
cool.
Yeah, the dedicated drive-through window with
Yeah.
a plaque above it.
Right, and the person that would be behind the glass there, and the little drawer would come in and out.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Still there.
I guess that was before hydraulics came
That's right,
into
before
banks.
hydraulics.
Yeah.
Most of the time I've seen across the country when you have three organizations in an area of very educated, affluent, intelligent people, they just can't get along with each other at all. And these groups came together and formed something called Modernism Week.
Yes and no.
Yes and no, okay.
It was really more of an outgrowth of the Modernism show.
Okay.
There was a furnishings show that started around 2002, I believe, here in Palm Springs. at
That
the
was
convention
Jacques
center.
Cassin?
Jacques Cassin.
Uh-huh.
And he was part of that company that managed the show. And as I remember it anyway, Jacques was trying to come up with a way of bringing more people to Palm Springs for the show. And he thought, well, why don't we have a Modernism weekend where there would be, homes.
So the show was originally like a one-day event?
It was Friday,
days?
Saturday, Sunday.
Oh, okay.
Weekend.
Yeah, it was a
Right.
weekend. And
After the movie, Palm Springs Weekend.
correct.
Yes, right.
That's right. I don't know if anybody remembers that movie.
1966,
Oh,
I
it's a
think.
real movie?
Yeah.
Okay.
It was one of those swinging 60s movies that
Right.
had all the young 20-something stars of the time in it.
What's
Yeah, okay.
the guy from Wild Wild West? What's his
Robert
name?
Conrad.
Conrad.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, and oh gosh, I can't remember the name of the
They
one. right
have
now.
paraphernalia about that movie down at the camp gift shop, I think.
Yes,
Oh, man.
and a really cool poster.
Yeah.
with a Thunderbird, a '63 Thunderbird convertible. They're
Yeah.
all zooming around in.
Yeah.
So he started this as a weekend event, and it was really successful. And the second year, I think it was still part of the Modernism show, and then it spun off as an independent nonprofit. And Jacques then became head of it
Okay.
at that time, and he left the Modernism show. And then it just continued to grow to what it is today, which is 10 days. Even though it's now called Modernism Week, it's actually 10 days.
Plus, you have bonus extra innings in October, right?
They have a preview, they call it. Modernism Week
Which is a
preview.
weekend. Sort
3
of.
days or so, 3 or 4 days, something like that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, what's the difference between Modernism Week and Modernism Preview?
They're 6 months apart.
Yeah. It only lasts 3 days. They do have a show, so they still sell, objects and things. They have maybe fewer home tours. I don't remember.
But Modernism Week in February is where people tend to come in the biggest numbers.
That's the big one. Oh, my
Yeah.
God, yes, absolutely.
From all over the world.
Sure.
There are huge contingents here from Canada and Australia, particularly.
Right.
New Zealand. Where
Yes.
else do they come from in large numbers?
Germany, Britain. A
Mm-hmm.
lot come from Britain. Lots of Canadians, of course, but they
Yeah.
come here anyway because of the weather.
Yeah, I saw you have 1 or 2 Canadian airlines at the airport.
Yeah. Well, this is the place you want to come. Normally, this February, very cold,
Yeah.
but normally it's really very pleasant.
Yeah, because in Canada it gets down to -10, -20,
Yeah.
and they want to get in the sun.
Right. People from Minnesota, anybody from the upper Midwest and Canada.
Wants to
Yeah,
come down here.
maybe 54 degrees here, but in Vancouver, it's 40.
Wow.
That's not too
Toronto,
bad.
38.
Well, they're having a
Having my
hot
phone.
streak up there.
But look how
We're going there.
low.
and now with the weather, Tom Giles.
Right. And Raleigh, it's pouring rain. So it's Palm Springs wins.
It always wins.
It does win. How big is Modernism Week now in terms of people and staff and infrastructure and all of that?
Well, I'm not an expert on Modernism Week because, it's a separate organization. But from what I know, don't quote me on this. I guess you probably will.
We
since
are
I'm on
quoting
the air.
you.
Apparently, they have 150,000 people that come.
Okay.
Something like, is it $4 million or four? I don't even
It's
remember.
pretty big.
Amount of money that's generated in economic activity. They have nonstop bus tours, those double-decker bus tours that go all around the city all day long, always sold out.
fleet of them.
A fleet, an actual fleet. And then so many different neighborhoods open their homes. My house was on a tour on Monday for 4 hours. There are lots of parties every night. There are incredible lectures, incredible films. It's just packed with stuff.
It has a big structure now. You have a chairman
Yes.
and a president and an executive director and
Lots of
staff.
volunteers.
And
Yes.
you come to this thing, and it's not like going to a flower show in some community center. I mean, just the building itself, the camp, which stands for Community and Meeting Place.
Yeah,
I
I think that's right.
is this gigantic erected set of tents.
Right.
There's a main tent and there's a theater tent off to the side where they
Yes.
have lectures and other kinds of...
It's right across from the art museum, so it's right in the center of
Yeah.
town. And behind the new downtown, which has just been built, the center of town, that is.
Okay. What is the new downtown part?
There used to be an enormous shopping center there that was built in the 70s that went bust and was vacant for at least 10 years.
Was that Town and Country?
No. It was the Desert Inn Shopping Center, and then it was just called the Desert Fashion Plaza. That's what it was called. And it was defunct for at least 10 years. So it finally was demolished. And with that enormous space, the city, after many years of squabbling and a lot of ups and downs, finally approved and was built a new downtown in that area that is, I think, very sophisticated. The architecture is really good. There's a high-end hotel called the Rowan, the Kimpton Rowan,
yep.
that went up, which I
Yep.
like a lot, with a beautiful rooftop thing. Anyhow, it is much better than I think most people anticipated. And being right in the art museum is on one side, then there's this new area, and then there's the older part of the city on the other side of the street, and it's working great, actually.
And the thing I tell people when we bring folks out here every year is that even though there's all these people that attend Modernism Week, it never really feels crowded when I go to something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's so many
because
events.
There's so many events, it's all spread out. It's not like going to a football game and you've got 60,000 other people to contend with
Right.
at the same moment.
Yeah.
So
I think
that
it's only
makes
the
it
bus
really
tours
nice.
that have been the issue, that they just can't get enough buses because they're always sold out. And I don't even know how many double-decker buses exist in California, but I think they're all here.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, and they're always full. They're constantly going around the city.
Yeah, Mark Davis was telling me a little bit about the infrastructure that goes on behind the buses and some of the other things with erecting the tent.
Yeah, it's crazy.
And then you've got to build a toilet village next to...
This takes a toilet village.
It sure does.
It does. You've got to build a toilet village. And these are not like just porta potties. I mean, these are like trailers that are specially outfitted to be
Yeah.
bathrooms. And then you have to evacuate the, what's the term for it? Effluent. You have to evacuate that stuff like every day on a truck that goes in and out of Palm Springs or puts it somewhere appropriate. I mean, it's a whole...
You're quite the expert on this.
I have learned a lot this week.
Yeah.
I don't know as much about the effluent
little
process.
Well, what's in the future for Modernism Week? I mean, what do you guys aspire to? Are there any preservation battles on the horizon, or are there any kinds of special events you'd like to get here one day?
Well, in terms of preservation issues, yes, there's a major one, which is the Town and Country Center. That's been
Okay.
going on for at least a decade. And
That's a Paul Williams project?
Paul Williams and A. Quincy Jones.
Okay.
Started around 47, and then it was, say, between 47 and 52. And it's been empty for... at least-
Former shopping center.
Yeah, it's not actually a shopping center per se. It was more of a mixed use. So there was a restaurant called the Town and Country Restaurant. There were ground floor retail and offices, and then there were second-story apartments.
Yeah.
So I mean,
That's really ahead of its time.
yeah, it's ahead of its time. And beautiful architecture, but it's been empty for, God, at least a dozen years now, and it's in bad shape. And the property owner has really not wanted to invest money in anything related to it, because the plan is to demolish much of it and put up a hotel.
Got
this
to
and
put him
that.
on the phone with a big boy guy.
Yeah, that's an
know.
idea.
Is Big Boy still around? Big Boy owner?
The owner of
No,
the town.
of the one that you saved. Is
Yeah.
that guy still around?
I don't know. I haven't really spoken with him in a couple.
Full circle. Bring him back.
Yeah, interesting.
Got to get an acolyte.
Yeah,
Whatever the word is.
that's a good point. Yeah, it's interesting. I hadn't thought of
Bring
that.
in a giant Big Boy statue and hang a protest flag from it right outside the Town and Country.
That could help.
Yeah.
That really could help.
That would have an impact.
Because isn't the giant Marilyn scheduled here at some point?
She's supposed to be coming back at some point.
So tell our listeners about the giant Marilyn.
She is a piece of art that is the famous scene from the movie where she's standing over a subway grating, and the air blows up in her dress and so forth. And so she's pushing down the front of her dress, and that is the statue, and it's enormous.
How, like 40 feet, 50
I don't know.
feet?
I'm not
big.
good at figuring it, but it's really big.
Yeah.
And you can walk underneath her.
I assume a lot of people will do that.
And they did, and that's always the funny thing for those selfies, You just got to go underneath Marilyn and ha. So they had it on the corner where actually now the new buildings in the downtown area have been built.
Yeah.
So for a while that area was vacant after they tore down the shopping center. So she was on the corner, very prominent. People loved it there because, it was just in the heart of the city, and you could take lots of fun pictures, the mountains in the background. But then when they built the new buildings, she was taken away and off to some other city. But now, because...
Is she on display somewhere? Or is
she
in a
is somewhere
warehouse?
else. No, she's actually on display somewhere else, and I can't remember what
Does
city.
she ever write or call?
No. Very rude.
Okay.
Tom, can you find her in your phone? Oh,
Yeah.
Okay.
We'll see if I can find her.
She travels. She travels.
Yeah, okay.
But she's supposed to come back here at some point.
Does she have her own, giant limo she travels in?
They take her apart in pieces. It's kind of gruesome.
Oh, yeah.
Ooh.
Yeah, little pieces.
Do you have to bolt Marilyn together, I wonder? Or is she modular?
I don't know if she's No, she can't be fiberglass if they take her apart. I don't know how she comes apart. I don't know if she's bolted or glued. I'm not positive about that.
So the idea is to have the giant Marilyn back, and then the Illuminaire house at some point will be reassembled.
Yes, that's important.
I interviewed last year one of the landscape architects who was working on this master plan concept.
Great.
And that's where ideally they want to have both of these things
correct
on different sides of the space.
And it's still near the art museum.
She is now vacationing in Latham Park in Stamford, Connecticut.
She gets around.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
She went far.
She did.
Yeah.
That's according to my phone.
That's helpful.
The phone knows all.
Yeah, let me see if I can call her.
It'd be great to have a little cell phone right up by Marilyn.
Yeah, right.
Oh, gosh.
Hello. Well, thanks so much for joining us, Peter. It's been a pleasure to
thank
finally
you.
meet you in person, and I hope you have a great rest of your week.
Indeed, there's so much more to do here.
Don't touch that dial. There's more to come from U.S. Modernist coverage of Modernism Week.
CEO, does that mean you're making $5 billion a year?
4.
Oh.
No,
You
I
always
wish.
aspire to more.
We are a nonprofit, so
Yeah. But you're a big nonprofit now. I mean, you've got a multi-million-dollar budget to put this thing on.
We do, but the majority of that money goes back out to the community. So any of the neighborhood tours that are opening up their homes, there are 32 this year, they get the majority of that money back, and they usually put it into their neighborhood organizations for, fixing the streets or signage, or some of them even donate to the animal shelter.
Right.
So all that money does go back to our partners and our neighborhood organizations.
I know that
which is
part.
good.
I guess what I'm saying is that people don't realize how sophisticated and professional your organization is
thank you.
now.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier with Peter about what it takes to build giant tents downtown and your little toilet village that you have set up next to it. And
I take pride in my toilet village,
yes,
by the way.
And the bus system,
Yeah.
all those drivers and the buses themselves and the organization to put that together, the computer systems that you have to make this all work, plus the endless amounts of catering and volunteers. I mean, you have 1,000 volunteers?
No, not that many. It's between 400 and 600 volunteers.
Okay.
But what I like about, thank you for saying that about camp, because that's my baby, and it is a lot to put it together. But fortunately, we were in the same location this year as we were last year, so it was really just laying out the same plan. But it's a real community event, and that's why I like it. 32 neighborhoods open up all of their homes to let people come through, 400 to 600 volunteers. The neighborhoods let us drive buses through there, and I just, everybody's involved, so I really like, the aspect of building community here in Palm Springs.
We were trying to figure out earlier, how many buses do you bring in from L.A. for this?
Well, we use 5. We bring in 6 as a backup.
Okay.
Because we've had them break down before, which is not good.
And mid-tour,
Yeah, a couple of times. So, but we always have a bus ready to go, and we have 82 bus tours this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's great. It's great, and they all sell out. And that was the one thing that I took back in 2011 that turned me on to Modernism Week. I had purchased a home here in 2010, and I didn't know exactly that much. I didn't know that much about Palm Springs. So I took a bus tour, and I was like, wow, I live in this place. And then 1 year later, I was full-time resident here in Palm Springs and immediately got involved with Modernism Week. So the bus tour is awesome.
It really is. I think what's really spectacular about it is if you're sitting on the top deck, which is where almost everybody is, you get a very unique view of these homes, particularly the ones that are over, little walls. You can peer over a bit and see.
Absolutely.
And since all the communities are into this, they know the buses come every year. So I guess they suspend their nude barbecues during that time.
We have a few instances where, somebody was caught naked. But, I mean, that most of them know. They hear the bus coming.
Yeah.
And throw a towel around them. And
yes.
run to the back room.
During the year, Modernism Week has a preview in October.
We do.
Which is 3 days?
4 days now.
4 days now.
Yes.
So what is the difference between the preview time and Modernism Week as a 10-day, 11-day festival?
It's just a preview of what's to come. And it started off really as an event for the locals so that people who live here in Palm Springs, who usually open up their homes, can enjoy Modernism Week without having to participate in February because they're all busy working,
working the event.
Yeah, working the event. But then it turned into a way for us to get media to come out to Palm Springs for the fall preview, to go ahead and photograph, what was going to be premiering in February.
Smart.
And so they have photos in the story prior to Modernism Week, and so that helps, promote the February event.
Okay.
It's like a movie trailer.
A little bit.
Yeah.
A little bit, yeah. So we have people coming from all over the world, and a lot of international media is now attending Modernism Week as well. So.
In a world of Cape Cods and Spanish revivals, one town fights back.
That's right.
Coming this
Modernism.
fall, Modernism Week.
Right. What was that the movie Palm Springs Weekend?
Yes.
Troy Donahue,
Robert Conrad. Who else?
Connie Stevens.
Yep.
Stephanie Powers.
She's
Jack
still around.
Preston, yeah.
Wow.
Yep.
Jerry Van Dyke.
Yeah.
All your 60s stars.
That's your next project.
And Bill Moon.
Chris.
Okay. Is to have all those celebrities come out
reassemble
here?
the cast.
Yep.
Conrad's still alive. He's in the Pacific Northwest, I think. He's like 85. But if you could assemble the cast for something here on that would be like
that's a great idea.
And since we talked about this in a different interview, we should say it's a 1963 movie.
Yeah.
All right, great. I will take that as my own.
Yes.
And I will sell it to the board and say I came up with a great idea.
Yes.
Okay.
We had nothing to do with it
We
here.
had nothing to do with it.
We won't record this at all, will we, Tom?
No, it's an excellent idea. For
yeah.
sure.
It's a fun movie. I have actually seen it.
I have too.
It was intended to be kind of a lighthearted romp, but it really is a more hilarious comedy over the years because it is so dated in so many ways of that kind of early 60s teenage optimism. But it also really captures in the video they shot around town.
Yeah.
Some stuff for history's purposes.
Exactly.
That has been lost.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because you didn't have that many video crews running around.
No, not in the
that
60s
era.
or 70s
No,
for sure. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Be fun?
Yeah,
Be
I
fun?
think so.
We have had a really great time coming out here this last 5 years and working with Modernism Week. Again, your staff is just spot on.
Thank you.
With everything.
Yeah, I mean, we have an excellent team. I don't know, we just kind of all came together with the same passion and the same likes, and we all think alike. And at the end of the day, we just want to create a unique experience for people coming into Palm Springs and make sure that everybody's happy. Like this week has been challenging because of the cold weather, which only bothers people in Palm Springs. But, it's always, right on the edge of getting ready to rain. So, most of our events are outdoor, but it really hasn't had that much of an effect this year, which is good.
I'm hoping that with climate change, it will not hit you guys too hard in the coming years.
I know, right?
Otherwise, it'll be snowfall during Modernism Week.
Well, if you look around the mountains, they're all covered in snow, which is
Yeah.
pretty unusual for February here in Palm Springs.
And the mountains are like right here. I mean, you really live with them.
You do.
In your backyard.
You do.
It's just amazing.
Well, and that's why we have so many post and beam and, indoor-outdoor living houses here in Palm Springs, because you take advantage of all the views, which include the mountains, and it's just beautiful right now.
Now, I know for us, when we leave here on Sunday, about a week later, I start planning for the next year.
Sure.
And I've heard stories that what you guys like take a couple days off and then get together for a drink and start talking about the next year? I mean, it happens pretty quickly, doesn't it?
It does happen pretty quickly. I mean, we spend mostly the month of March after we take camp down, gathering the numbers and sending out all the payments to all the neighborhood organizations. And then we have to put together a presentation for the city. And then we have a partners summit where we bring in all our partner organizations and talk about, the statistics and the data from Modernism Week. And we go right into the neighborhood tour summit, where we bring all the organizers for those neighborhood tours, and we share that data with them. And then immediately we're working on the fall preview.
Yeah.
So there's not much of a break. Not much of a break.
No.
Yeah.
And I'm always amazed at how your staff and volunteers are not just engaged, but they're really reliable and accurate. And I mean, they've got it going on.
They certainly do. They certainly do. And I feel really blessed to kind of have this job. It's like the best job in the whole world. And it's not just the job that I have or the event that we do, but it's the people I work with, and it's the community. They're all a really big part of this. And I've never lived in a place like Palm Springs. And, coming from L.A., this is like a vacation all the time, even though we're working 24/7 for 365 days to get ready for our event.
So are there any insider tips you can give people who are planning for next year about how to plan well to come and visit during Modernism Week?
Yeah, so a couple of suggestions would be, one, about October 25th, we have a preview of what's about to go online on November 1st for the February event. Most people who come in for Modernism Week take that week to kind of plan their schedule because, with 350 events, it's a lot of reading and a lot of photographs to look at and a lot of planning. And we have some hardcore attendees who will actually put together a spreadsheet and have it all ready for 12:01 on November 1st.
Here's the spreadsheet.
There you go. Yeah.
You talk about spreadsheets, you're talking about George's favorite thing.
Sure, and mine too. I'm a data nerd. I love
nerds.
spreadsheets, yeah. Other than just having a spreadsheet and doing the preview on October 25th and putting together your schedule, for people who haven't been here, we always say the same thing. We suggest the architectural bus tour, and we tell people to come to camp. We have a full staff at camp, an information desk, and a box office where we can sell
free good
tickets.
coffee in the morning.
I know, it's great.
Yeah.
Because that's where I had my 3 cups of coffee this morning. So, we work with people all year long to try to set up the best plan and the most unique schedule for people. So my staff is really willing to help. But I would say do the bus tour, do a party, do a neighborhood tour, go to a film, go to a lecture, come to camp, bam, you're done.
There's also a little restaurant inside camp.
There is Cheeky's to go.
Yeah, Cheeky's to go, and they're a full service restaurant, food and drink and alcohol and so forth. And the other day I was in there, and it was fairly early, like 10 o'clock a.m. And these 3 women were sipping martinis at the bar, and just having the best time. It's like, if you're going to do day drinking, this is the time.
This is the time to do it.
5 o'clock somewhere.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
just with big grins on their faces.
Martinis are a must here in Palm Springs, no matter what time of the day.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We just did a show with the Martini Whisperer out of Australia.
Okay.
Who is a fellow named Philip who is getting ready to do a Netflix series on martinis. He would be a great guest speaker.
Yeah,
for you.
That's a great idea.
One year.
He's really into martinis and what goes into them.
Oh, yeah.
And
the sourcing.
How the weather and the person and the, position of the moon and the stars affect how you mix your drink.
Gin versus vodka, shaken versus stirred.
Up versus rocks.
Yes.
Yep. Olive versus twist.
Right. Time of day, atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
So, there could be a series in there.
Yeah, I think there could be a good series
Absolutely.
in there.
I'll keep an eye out for it.
Well, Chris, thanks for stopping by. It's a real pleasure to have you here, and I hope you get over your cold. Hope you feel better.
Thank you so much, and I really appreciate you guys coming to Palm Springs and supporting us every year. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. Want to hang out with U.S. Modernist at Modernism Week in February next year? Send an email to george@usmodernist.org with your name and phone number. U.S. Modernist Radio is underwritten by Angela Rowland, your special agent for Modernist houses. 919-995-0550. Okay, take us out, Tom.
Visit usmodernist.org's massive archives to listen to past shows, discover documentation of 7,000 significant modernist houses, and access 2.5 million pages of classic 20th century architecture magazines. U.S. Modernist Radio is produced by Soundtracks Recording Studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. Our theme song was performed by George Smart and Robinson Earl. Cindy Stratton, not her real name, researches guests from her secret underground lair. U.S. Modernist Radio is a production of Modernist Archive, a nonprofit educational archive for the documentation, preservation, and promotion of modernist residential design. I'm Tom Guild. George and I'll be back soon with another Modernism Week edition of U.S. Modernist Radio.